Do shout if you have any questions, and we will share screen. Okay, you can see it now. Take silence as a yes. So in terms of our book, we are working off page 178 in mine on the little bit on pollination. So if you've done ag, you already have a heads up already on that front. So which plants have their bits exposed for all to see, and what is the advantage in terms of pollination for the plant? So I asked...
Sorry, I missed the Zoom thing last week. I didn't realize it was on.
That's okay. So it's all there to catch up. It's all in our files under class materials. So it is there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but the first page, what yours would have been 107 or 174.
That
wasn't on that.
That's all there. There's a video of that. There is a standalone video link. So if you go back to the assignment, there's...
Yeah, I found it. But
yeah.
The first page of the chapter wasn't there.
The 174.
Yeah.
It is there. That is a video link of... There is a YouTube link. I'll find it for you and I'll resend it. But it is there.
No, I found the video. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, but there's two links. There's one for the pre-lesson, and there was then the lesson we did.
Oh, okay.
So you might have to go into... If you go into class notebook and find the relevant reproduction in plants page, there is a link to the lesson in there.
I got 102.
Okay, so I had given you, there was the Microsoft Forms for you to do kind of like a little pre-test on this content. So vast majority of you have done it. So pollination, you should understand, it hasn't changed from primary school when you were in there, except now there is a difference in the word. So all it is transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma of a flower, but very importantly, they have to be of the same species. So this is going in on page 178, I think. Yeah, on page 178. So that's the important part. They have to be the same species. It's like humans can't have babies with horses. Okay, the sperm and egg won't recognize each other. So similarly with male pollen and female egg cells, nothing is going to happen.
Got it. I found the page, miss. Sorry about that.
Okay. So transfer pollen from the anther to the stigma of a flower of the same species. So this is the anther over here. This is the stigma. And it literally will get caught in the wind and it'll end up here. And then we're getting ready for fertilization. So you need to send that. To follow the instructions. Follow the instructions.
I don't know what the instructions.
Okay, well then you have to wait. You have to wait, okay?
I do know what.
Follow the. It's written. It's on the.
So it's a time for
And yeah, I have to go, my sweet. So just wait. Do something else. Okay, so there are two types of pollination. Then, are you not working now? So you're either self-pollinated or you're cross-pollinated. So the little diagram down here, the two pictures of the flowers will show you. So if you're self-pollinated, you're putting your pollen from your anther to your stigma and you're in your same plant. So the little animation of the flower now, you'll see the little yellow pollen grain go onto the stigma here. And if you're cross-pollinated, you're going to be going to a different plant. Okay, and obviously they have to be the same species. So in the little diagram, the little yellow piece of pollen has gone from here all the way onto another plant.
And I don't have any long-term downsides for the plant, you know, like if it pollinates itself.
Less chance of variation. It's pollen. It's obviously they want to reproduce, but in an ideal world, they want to get their babies away from their main plant as much as possible to increase the chance of everyone surviving.
Okay.
And if they're slightly different genetics, then again, you get variation. So again, it's the whole same species thing. So you have two pictures, and they are the two different types of pollination. On the next page. So I'm going to flick if that's okay. So these are the two types. So if you're a wind pollinated plant, or you are an animal pollinated plant. So you can put those just under the little photos for yourself.
How do you log into the vocabulary thingy?
I'll look later. I can't do that.
Am I gonna play a game?
So the type of question they can ask is, how are wind pollinated plants adapted for their function versus animal pollinated? So usually for wind pollinated, if they have any petals, they are going to be small and green, but literally their bits are all outside of the plant. So you have a little space for a diagram down at the bottom. So if I was drawing, so all you're drawing,
Is it snack time?
doing this. So the girl bits will be outside of the plant. The boy bits will be outside of the plant, so that's going to increase your chance of wind catching the pollen and getting it to a stigma. Okay, so anthers and stigma.
Rico, do you know how to...
I love you both. Go out. Is that okay to go? So then for insect pollinated, it's going to be different in that it's now going to be a flowering plant, or what we would associate with the flowering plant. So here it will have So it'll have your coloured petals. It'll have your stigma inside. It'll have your anthers inside. It'll have nectaries down here at the bottom to encourage insects or animals to get pollen on their coats and distribute it.
Miss, do you have a table of this, or are we trying to?
No, these are just
sneak
the
on this?
diagrams that go underneath. So we'll do the table in a second. So it's the diagrams that are going underneath.
Oh, okay.
And then the last part of this is just the table for comparison. So usually petals are going to be small and green if you're wind pollinated, as if they're present at all. In terms of your pollen, you have to have it in really large amounts because it obviously now needs to blow on to where it's going to go, and it will usually be light, it'll be small, and it will be relatively dry so that it can be carried by the wind. Your anthers are going to be large and outside, and your stigma are going to be large. They make them feathery so that they can actually grab the pollen, and these will also be outside. And animal pollination is kind of pretty much the opposite. So usually they will be large petals, they're going to be coloured, and scented. The pollen will be small, but it's going to be really sticky now because you want it to attach onto the animal. Your stigma is small, or sorry, your anther is small and it's inside your flower. And likewise with your stigma, it's going to be small, it's going to be sticky so that the pollen will stick onto it and you will find it inside. Okay, anyone have questions on pollination, or are you happy with that? Okay, we take silence as we're all good. So I want to why are you now not letting me change? Okay, has the screen now changed for you? Yeah. Alrighty, so we're going to have a look at fertilization, and we'll just do this one and then we'll stop. So plants are weird. For animals, egg meets sperm, zygote made, boom. Plants are a little different. They have what's called a double fertilization. So as well as making a zygote, they actually make a second thing. It's a food source. So you should have a definition of fertilization from junior cycle. So we may be adding to it a little bit. We will be adding to it a little bit because you now come preloaded with a little bit more information. So it's the union or the fusion of male and female, but we're going to put in the word haploid gametes to form a diploid zygote. So does anyone think they'd like to tell me the name of the two nuclei that are in the male bits when we did our male formation? We ended up with two nuclei. Any takers? Because I feel like I'm talking to myself.
Generative and tube.
Thank you so much, Laura, because I feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, so it is. So the male, they are tube nucleus and generative nucleus. And note here, these guys, they are not gametes. There's no gametes made yet. It's going to make them in a minute. And then the female, there was 3 things that get made. So anyone else other than Laura, there was a name for them.
2 polar nuclei and an egg nucleus.
Thank you. Nucleus. Perfect. I can't see who that was because you didn't flick on my screen, but thank you so much. So these are the female gametes. So the egg nucleus, and we have 2 polar nuclei. Now I'm going to show you, it's not quite an animation, it's a PowerPoint animation, and I'll tell you what it is that we want to put in the pictures. So technically it is the egg nucleus that is your female gamete, and the 2 polar nuclei are the other things for your what's called your double fertilization. So you have a page and it has a picture of stigmas on them, kind of looks like this, and it goes over 2 pages. So we're going to do certain parts of it. So this is what yours kind of looks like. So I'm just going to start off with the picture and then I'll tell you what we want to have. So this is the stigma, the girl bits that are in the plant. And you have your stigma, your style, and your ovary. And these are showing you in this picture the fact that the 5 haploid nuclei get destroyed and 2 are taken forward. Okay. So that's your embryo sac there, your polar nuclei, and this is your egg nucleus, is this little guy in here. So in your first diagram, if you just want to draw for yourself, so this is what your one looks like in here, you can just put in your 2 dots and your 1 dot like so. So a circle with a little dot inside it. That's going to go into your picture number 1. And there's a place for step 1 blurb on top of it. So you're drawing your polar nuclei and your egg nucleus. So it'll look something like this. So what happens is, up here is our pollen grain. It lands on top of your stigma, and what it does then is it literally forms a tube. So these guys are going to go down this tube. So if you want to put this diagram into your step 1, and the blurb then for it is, the stigma receives the pollen tube forms, and it's going to grow downwards by chemotropism. So hopefully you can remember, we did it last year when we did the plant chapters. I know it was a very special time in all of your lives. So chemotropism, tropism is a plant's response to a stimulus, and a chemotropism is a plant's response towards a chemical. So the ovule secretes a chemical that will attract the nuclei in the pollen tube toward it. Supposedly human egg cells do the exact same. They secrete a chemical that tells sperm to go left or right when they get to the fallopian tubes.
Miss, so are we running this in the step 1 part?
So,
Is that what you said there?
Yeah, so the blurb, the writing is going to go in the step 1 part, and the little diagram goes underneath it. So you should have the pictures of the stigma. So this is step 1. Okay, I'm going to skip ordinary level lovelies are out. So this is the next picture that I want you to put in. So on step 2, so this is the step 2 picture. And what we're going to say over here is your tube nucleus makes the pollen tube, so it literally has little digestive enzymes in it, and that chews down through your stigma, your style, and your ovary. And then the generative nucleus follows behind. Happy with that? So this is just showing you what's happening. So in the next, they're still coming down, your tube is still making your generative nucleus, or your tube nucleus is still making the tube. It kind of goes a little bit of the scenic route. So this is going to be our step 3 picture. No, apologies, this is the step 3 picture.
Miss, can you go back for like seconds, please? Thanks.
Mince,
Yeah.
is the the generative nucleus and tube nucleus in the pollen?
So remember when we did the male gamete formation? Remember we had the microspore mother cell underwent meiosis, made the tetrad. Each cell has a nucleus and that nucleus undergoes mitosis once. And the two nuclei that are in there are the tube and the generative, and then they're inside the pollen cell. So if you flick back the page where we drew the diagram, the very last diagram in that male gamete part is that's a pollen grain. So you have the two nuclei in there and you have the extene and the intene.
Oh yeah, okay.
So that's the pollen grain. So both of those nuclei are in there and then they get transported to the top of a stigma. And then this is what's happening. Peter, are you good to go? Take that as a yes. So this is our step 3. And the points to note here now are, we originally in step 2 had only 2 dots in here, but now we have 2 here and we have 1 here. So this is the tube nucleus down here. And this is now, so as your generative goes down the tube, it undergoes mitosis and it makes 2 male gametes. And your tube nucleus disintegrates when it gets to the micropyle, and the micropyle is the opening into the ovule. So this is where the male gametes are made. So mitosis in your pollen tube to give you 2 male gametes, and the tube nucleus, once it's made, the tube destroys so that these little guys can mosey along down the tube and get into an ovule. So if you want to write for yourself, male gametes made here in there. Sorry, did that wrong now. Oh, apologies. I'll figure this out. Eraser. So male gametes are made in pollen tube. So tube nucleus makes the tube from top in the stigma all the way to the ovary and then disintegrates, and the generative follows the tube nucleus and undergoes mitosis to actually make your male gametes in the tube. Okay, Millie, you okay? All right. Yeah. Alrighty, so this then is going to be our step 4 diagram. So we still have our tube, and these now here are the female ones. I'm going to color them in the red, and we now have the 2 blue male gametes. So the male gametes have gotten into your ovule, and 1 male gamete fuses with the egg nucleus to make a diploid zygote. So that's the same as us, egg and sperm meet and you make your diploid zygote. But this is where plants are funky. The other male gamete, this fuses with the 2 polar nuclei to form. So I've got a haploid. So this is haploid, and these guys are both haploid. So I've got 3 haploids now. So when we did 2 haploids together, that makes a diploid. So 3 haploids makes a triploid, and it makes what's called an endosperm nucleus. And I'll explain what this is going to do or become. So this part here refers to that blurb, and this little joining down here refers to this blurb. So if you think about us being animals, egg meets sperm makes a zygote. We have placenta that's going to supply nourishment to the developing embryo. Plants don't have that, so their second fertilization is the instructions to make the food store for the plant. So as well as making the embryo, eventually they also supply the food that's going to be made in the seed. So that's why it's a double fertilization. Now, do you have any questions on that?
So the two polar
Nuclei.
nuclei, when they fuse with the male, they become like the storage of the thing, like the food store of a seed.
They'll become the food store of the seed.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Thanks.
No problem. So now it should be just flip over the page for the final picture. Now the reality is the pictures you won't ever have to supply. It'll be asking you a specific question and you just have to provide the description. So it is the step blurbs that are important. But the pictures sometimes help to understand what's going on. So it is the blurb that is the most important. Yeah, go for Laura.
For step 3, what did you say after it was when the tube nucleus disintegrates, when it gets into the wall?
The micropyle, micropyle.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you go back to when we did the female gamete formation, we did make a little note. All it is a little tiny hole, and that's just the way that the gametes get in. Okay, so the last bit of this, we've just done this part, is this picture. So what we have now in terms of our picture is we have our endosperm nucleus, so 3N is triploid, that should be a small n, apologies, and we have a diploid zygote down here, and this is the end of the double fertilization. So the double fertilization produces your triploid endosperm nucleus. So this is the blurb, and it produces a diploid zygote. So food store for your developing embryo and the developing embryo.
Does this happen in all plants?
There's some plants that they go more than triploid, so that's just wrecks your head. So it's called
like quadruploid?
A polyploidy. Yeah, you can have 4N.
Jeez.
I'm not an expert. Mr. Ryan, he'll know all about it for those interested. But I do know if you do ag with genetics in university and you have to do genetic crosses with 4N, that it is fun. Not. Okay, so just to finish the writing for this, so just underneath the bottom of that table, it's on page 180 on mine, if you're happy. So in our double fertilization, the triploid endosperm nucleus is formed from a male gamete and 2 polar nuclei, and your diploid zygote is formed from your male gamete and your egg nucleus. Now you have a QR code on that page. So again, it's that lady, the biology bugbears lady, summarizing pollination and fertilization. If you want to have a look at that, you are more than welcome. Assignment has pinged now for you. So there's just some questions on class notebook. If you haven't done the form, have a look at it and give it a go. I'm going to mark it later this afternoon. And if you have any issues, shout.